how many skeins of yarn do I have in my stash? Over, under 500? What do you think? Hi, my name is Emily Crow from The Cozy Crow, and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, you might not know that this year I'm working really hard on attacking my stash. This is a goal that I've done in the past, quite a few years ago, when I had a blog and I was writing a little bit on that. And I am reinventing this challenge because I have a lot of yarn and I want to use it for multiple reasons. I'm not working as much because I recently had a baby, so I don't have the budget to buy yarn like I did previously. I have lots of beautiful yarns already in my stash that I would love to get use out of, and I just want to appreciate and savor this beautiful yarn that I have and be able to put it to use like I've intended. I am just behind on a lot of projects and ideas and inspiration that I've had, and I would love to try to tackle some of those things. So this year, my goal is to use up more yarn than I bring into my yarn stash, and I am sharing my process along with you. I already have a couple of videos in this challenge here on my YouTube channel that you can check out. The first video, I introduced kind of what this goal was, how I was going to measure my yarn stash, and I started making a spreadsheet where I categorize the yarn that I have, though the only yarn I categorized in that spreadsheet was my older stash, a lot of my acrylic yarns or acrylic blends, maybe some leftovers where I knit a sweater and I had an entire skein left over I don't know what to do with. I have a couple instances like that. Yarn that I've used for amigurumi, things of that variety. And so those are in tote bins because that's not yarn I necessarily plan to access frequently, though I would love to still use it up, but I have not categorized all the yarn in my yarn room / office space. You can see this is a bulk of that yarn, but I have it stored in a few other places as well. We'll pop up some footage here so you can kind of see what my yarn stash is looking like. And I really just want to tackle this categorization and find out how many skeins of yarn I actually have in my stash. Because previously, for the past maybe two and a half years, I've been categorizing my yarn stash as just a net in and out. So however many skeins I use up or destash, give away, etc., versus how many skeins I purchase or I'm gifted. And I just want to know exactly how much I have. It will be really interesting to see. I think that it's really fun to try to guess how much yarn we have. And so I am bringing you along with me for this leg of Attack My Stash. Over on Instagram, I'm going to have some polls in my stories that are going to introduce this over-under concept. So if you have not seen videos like this in the past, basically, I'm going to give you a category, like single sock skeins, and ask you, do you think I have over or under X amount? And then you get to vote which you think it is. And if you are correct that I have over that number or under that number, whichever is correct, then you win a point. I think it would be really fun to kind of play against my followers on Instagram. So I'm going to let you vote on which you think it is, over, under, and then I will take the opposite choice and we'll see who is right for all these different categories. And I'll make sure to share the results in this video. I'm also going to be classifying my yarn and putting it in the spreadsheet, so I'll be able to totally quantify it and have it organized. And I think that this will give me a better sense of what exactly I have in my stash, how much of this yarn I already have projects intended for it versus how much yarn I need to brainstorm project plans for. I think it'll just in general help my Attack My Stash goal as a whole. As a quick recap, I am not keeping track of my scrap yarn right now. So any sock skein that I've already used up in a pair of socks or anything that's less than half a full skein of yarn, I'm considering that scrap. And I have quite the stash of scraps. I'm also not gonna keep track of minis right now, I don't think. We'll see how much time I have this month, but my goal for April is to categorize my yarn stash and play this little over-under game with you because I thought it would be fun to kind of see what you guess as far as how much yarn I have. And at the end of this video, I'll unveil how many total skeins of yarn I have in my stash that I want to work through. One of my less quantifiable goals, I would say, this year for Attack My Stash is to be able to fit all my yarn in this room right now. This cabinet, not organized super great. So I think that will also contribute to getting more yarn in this room, but I would love to not have any more tote bins that are out in the garage of yarn. I have, I think, 2.5 tokens worth of yarn. I would love to work through some of my works in progress. I already have a couple vlogs on my channel where I'm working through some works in progress to use up that yarn. So you can check those out too if you're interested. And I'm just really hoping that getting a better sense of how much yarn I have in total will help me kind of narrow in and work through some of these yarns so that I can reach that end goal of mine. And I hope to, in general, have less of a yarn stash, be able to work through my projects more in real time. And I know that with 2 kids, one being a newborn, I don't have so much time at my disposal, and so I have to be really mindful of the projects I choose to work on. And so it's a long-term process. I don't think this is just going to be this year, but I am taking you along with me as I work down my stash. And I hope that you get some inspiration and ideas too for how you can use your own stash. And let me know down below if you want to see any other type of stash down content from me, because I really like the idea of being more intentional and mindful of the things that we purchase and use, and not necessarily being minimal, but not being excessive in our purchases, and making sure that we are just being intentional about our crafting and our making so that we can get the most out of that experience that we are seeking for. Not saying that shopping is bad. I love shopping for yarn. I'll be shopping for yarn later this month at the Great Basin Fiber Arts Fair, but I do want to be more intentional about it in general. And I think that as I've gotten older and more experienced in my crafting, I've been able to focus in a little bit better on the types of yarn that I like to use, that I like to wear, that I like to work with, and the types of projects that will get a lot of use from me. So without further ado, let's take a look at my yarn stash and play a little game of over under. I'm trying to figure out where to start with this just because I do not have time to organize everything today because I have 2 kids. One of them is napping. Thank goodness, because he woke up 5 times last night. So I'm a little wrecked. My eye is twitching as we speak. So I'm just gonna get done as much as I can. So I grabbed some extra tokens we have, and I'm going to just pick 2 categories, and I'm going to fill up these tokens so that I have somewhere to like keep them contained until I can categorize them in my spreadsheet and put them back on my shelves, and then start with another category. Categories that I'm thinking for over under, and you can definitely let me know down below in the comments your over under guesses as you're watching this video. I know that it won't contribute to my Instagram stories, and that is okay. But I do want to see kind of what you think I have as far as my yarn stash goes. So first category, sock yarn. I'm going to split this up into a few different categories because sock yarn is my highest purchased type of yarn, my highest purchased weight and fiber content, I would say, because I love knitting socks. I've knit over 100 pairs in my lifetime, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. I just think they're the perfect small, portable, interesting project for me. So I have lots of sock yarn. I also like to use sock yarns in garments and things. I just feel like it's really versatile because you can hold it with other things, hold it double on itself, and you can make a lot with something that is a sock blend of fingering weight yarn. So I'm going to kind of split down the categories a little bit more. We're gonna have a category of single skein sock yarn that I purchased intended for socks. I'm also going to have a category of sock sets. So an example of a sock set would be something like this that has a full skein of yarn as well as a mini. Sometimes they have 2 minis attached. Sometimes it's a 50-gram skein of the main color. But a put up like this, I would consider a sock set. So I'll have a different category of sock sets that I keep track of. And then I'm also just going to keep track of self-striping yarns separate. So even though this is a sock set of yarn, it is a self-striping colorway. So I'm going to have one category be just the self-striping yarn, one category being non-self-striping sock sets, and one category being all the other just single sock skeins. So I think that's going to cover everything that's like sock yarn related. I'm also going to, you'll see in this middle section, I've got about 3 cubes worth of yarns intended for accessories, whether that's shawl, hat, cowl, mittens or gloves, things like that, that I have kind of separate from my sock yarns that kind of go all the way over here. And then these 3 and a little bit in this last cubby hole, I've got yarns for garments. I do not buy a lot of garment yarn because it's expensive to buy that much yarn at once, and I don't make a ton of garments, so it's okay. I have quite the stockpile though. This is a lot of knitting right here as far as these garment yarns go. I'm also gonna have a category of yarns currently in my WIP basket. And you'll notice I have 2 whip baskets. I also have a couple whips that are not in here. They're by my bed because I work on them at nighttime. I also have some whips kind of set aside over here in baggies or, you know, half finished things. I don't know why they live over here. Probably because there's not enough room over here, but I have other whip yarns right here. I do not count yarn as being used up from my stash until I finish the project that it was included in, or I 100% finish that single skein of yarn. So if I'm like working on a blanket and I run out of that skein, check that one off the list. But if I have like half a skein left, I don't count it as used up until that project is done. So that'll be a category, is all the yarns currently like set aside in works in progress, in project bags, things like that. So that'll be kind of this area of yarn. You'll notice up here on my shelves, I also have some yarns intended for blankets. These 2 baskets especially, they're going to be a Swift Reads blanket. So I did Yarnaceous Fibers Club last year. There are 13 skeins of yarn inspired by books that are inspired by Taylor Swift songs. So that's 1 blanket quantity. I also have all of these like reading or book related yarns that I've set aside. Honestly, I'll probably include that as blanket yarn that I am thinking about using. I just don't quite know how. So that's another pseudo blanket quantity I'm going to include in that total. And then here's my other cabinet where it's a little less cute, but it still is really useful storage. So I've got a bunch of yarn up here from Mulberry Fiber Co. This was like a smaller advent, so they're all 50-gram skeins. I was thinking of maybe making a stripe hype or something similar, so that'll be part of garment yarn. This Pride and Prejudice yarn is going to be a blanket. I have scraps. See, some of these are larger scraps. We're not doing scraps today. I'm not counting scraps. But maybe I'll just throw it in for fun to vote like how many big scraps you think I have versus how many small scraps you think I have. Would be kind of interesting. And then I have minis, a couple other skeins of stock yarn that are not hand dyed. So that's kind of the bulk of my stash. I have a couple other random skeins here and there, but those are the categories I am thinking of for this little game. And I guess we'll see what my Instagram followers think as far as how much yarn I have when they pick my over under. And I will include my screenshots here of what I guess. I have not had good thoughts about this, but I think when I pull all that yarn off my shelves, put it in the bins, I'm gonna be able to kind of guesstimate what I think it'll be. So it hopefully will be at least a good guess for the over-under game. So let's get started on the first couple categories. Okay, this is where it's getting a little hairy because I have these yarns. I don't know what I want to do with them, but I have a variegated version, a self-striping version, and a minis. I wasn't counting minis unless they're included with a sock set. I guess I'll leave this separate because it's a self-striping, and this will go in my single sock skein bin. I've only gone through one cubby of this bookshelf, and I have way more sock sets than I thought. So I'm interested to see as I go through more of that sock yarn what I will have. All right, buddy, want to help me organize some yarn? Let's do it. Someone woke up from his nap. Now here's a question. What do I do with yarns that I bought to be used together for socks, but they're not a sock set? Which category do I put them in? I think I will put them in the single skein set because they don't have minis that go with them. I think that's how I'm going to differentiate it. Probably because my sock set bin is already kind of full and I have probably 2 more cubbies worth of yarn, if not more. Now my bin of single skeins is overflowing. So I've got, it looks like only 1 more bin left, or partial bin. I think I have like, excuse me, sir, you got something to say? I've got 1 more bin, but I don't think it's the whole bin that goes into these 2 categories. So after I get those placed in here, then I will take my pictures and upload them onto Instagram for people to vote on. And I'll let you know when I have everything in these bins, what my guesses are for how much yarn is in each of these categories. I am done, I think. if we have any extras, I think I'm just gonna have a miscellaneous section at the very end of all these categories for all the yarns that I forget about, because it happens and that's okay. These are all my single skeins of sock yarn, and actually my pile of sock sets is slightly bigger. I think quantity wise though, I might have a few more of these since none of these are attached to mini skeins, and so they can pack a little bit closer together. My guess for how much yarn I have in this category. How good are you at those like candy in a jar games? I'm gonna guess 80 skeins. So over on Instagram, I'm going to ask about over under 80 skeins. So you let me know down below. Do you think I have over or under 80 skeins in this bin? We'll give you lots of angles to show of how much yarn is in here. So I'm going to categorize this and find out my total number. I'll probably get back to you at the very end of this video what it was, but after I categorize this and get my number for this category, I'm gonna put them back on my shelves. It'll be a fun chance to rearrange for, you know, coming summer and what colors are inspiring me. I do like to pull up my stash and rearrange it a bit every once in a while, so I will enjoy doing that. And yeah, you'll have to stick around to the end of the video to see if it's over under 80 skeins. And now for the sock sets, like I said, I think the quantity is a little bit lower just because they can't pack in as much. And I'm only counting the full skeins in here. I'm not counting the minis. I'm just using them as sock sets as the category, right? I'm gonna go with over under 70 skeins of yarn. Do you think I have over or under 70 full skeins in my sock set yarn stash category? Again, giving you like as good of a peek as you can get. It's a little tricky. It's heavy, it's overflowing. I have a baby here I don't want to drop yarn on. Yeah, you. Yeah, you. Those are the two categories I'm going to start with. Let's actually put them in my spreadsheet like I've been meaning to do for a few months now. Let's tackle that and see how much yarn I have in these categories. They're not puppies then. 7 is definitely not a puppy anymore. This is gonna take a while.
Hi everyone. Today I'm going to show you some of my mom's yarn. So here we go. This is some of her yarn that I'm going to show off and talk about. So hang on there. Okay guys. So there's one yarn that I want to show you that I need to show you.
Whoops.
This is one of them. And here's another. Here's another. And here's some of our other yarns. But this one. Oh, I need to show you. Super cool. A super cool one. Oh, here it is. Here's a new one that I bet you haven't seen. It's super colors and sparkly. This is the biggest one. Oh, maybe it's this one. I can't decide which one is it. Just tell me which one it is. Oh, where's the camera? Oh, here. I call her Flower Queen. There's Daisy, Sparkles, Leafies, and Yoni, and Flowery, and Queenie, and Videoy, which is this one. She was making videos. Hi, I'm Videoy. I was making videos. Flowery loves flowers because she is a flower, you know? So let me know which one you like. Daisy, Sparkly, Queenie, Flowery, Videoy. Thanks for watching this video.
Okay, so I have finished cataloging all my single skeins and all my sock sets. I did find a DK weight sock set. So I think I'm gonna have a separate category just for DK weight sock yarns because I do knit DK socks occasionally. So I do have some of those. So I'm gonna have a small category of those. I think there's some more in this cubby, I think. But I'm gonna start the long task of putting these 2 big bins away. And then I'm gonna pull out my next couple categories so that I can get working on those too. Okay, I've gotten through a lot more yarn than I thought I would. Like I was able to knock out quite a bit earlier on. And then with these garment quantities especially, that will be really quick to input into my spreadsheet. So I'm getting there. I am pretty close to having all of this done. And then it's really just the blanket yarns and then any other miscellaneous skeins that don't necessarily fit the other categories, or they're stored in other places, so I need to make sure to double check that I have everything. Oh, and my works in progress. All that being said, I got through a lot more than I thought I would, so I'm going to categorize these in my spreadsheet, and then I'll probably come back to this another day, but we'll already be more than halfway done with categorizing, which is awesome. I thought this was going to take me like a whole month to tackle. I will say, just visually, I'm surprised by how many skeins I have devoted to garments. I am gonna say I think there are 90 skeins of yarn here. And then for accessories, I'm gonna go with 70 skeins of yarn. And then the other category I didn't share on screen yet, all my self-striping yarns, I'm gonna go with an even 20. And then for Christmas themed yarns, I'm also going to go for, I'm gonna go for 18. I think I have a little bit less of Christmas themed yarns. So we're gonna put those up on my over under polls and see what all of you think. And we'll get back to you and let you know exactly how many skeins I have in those categories. And then we'll be able to find out how many skeins of yarn I actually have in total. All right, I'm currently working on the blanket yarns, and I forgot to say on camera before I started classifying how much I think there is. I'm gonna guess 75 skeins of yarn. I know I had a lot that weren't even assigned to a specific blanket. It was just all of my book related yarns I had pulled from my stash and put them all together so that I could make a project with some, if not most of them. But other than those are at the bottom of my bin. I am finding classifying the blanket yarns a lot faster, as well as garments was really fast because I had more than one skein with the same information. So it made it really easy. And for right now, I'm working on the Swift Reads Club. I have 13 skeins. Everything is the same about this yarn except for the actual name of each colorway. So I'm hurrying and putting those in. And then I just have all the miscellaneous skeins. And for this over-under game, I'm going to have it as its own category of guessing. But in my spreadsheet, I'm going to end up putting them in the correct category once I kind of divvy up what those yarns belong to. I didn't want to have to do that with all the random skeins that I am finding in random corners of my craft room. So that's just everything else that wasn't easy for me to throw in with its appropriate category. Maybe it doesn't have a purpose yet. I don't really know what to do with it. So that's the miscellaneous section. But people on Instagram will still be able to vote whether it's over under the number that I guess. I'm gonna guess only 60 for that one because it doesn't look nearly as full. I'm feeling 60 for that. So we'll see, I guess, if I have over or under in that bin. And then all I have left is my works in progress that I will have to gather together and guess how many skeins are currently unaccounted for in my works in progress. And then I'll be done classifying and we can see what Instagram thinks as far as this over under game and whether Instagram votes correctly. Bless you! Oh my goodness! So many sneezes! The people love hearing your baby noises. Would you like to make some baby noises for the people? Microphone does not go in your mouth. sorry, Bubba. I love you. Yeah. We are now left with all the random skeins of book-related yarn, so this part is gonna take a hot minute. Good thing little man is happy over there. Look at him kicking. Oh, are you looking at the ceiling fan? Bloob. Bubba. Berry is eh. What letter says eh? Yep. And then bear. Yep, and there's actually 2 R's. And then a Y. Blueberry.
What's this?
Yep. Nice. We are all done categorizing my yarn, even the miscellaneous bin. All that's left is to categorize the yarn that I currently have locked in to my works in progress. I'm a little nervous to see how much yarn is in my works in progress stash. I think that there are 85 skeins of yarn locked in to these whips. So we'll see. I do have a bunch. I already pulled them up, but all this yarn is set aside all together, ready to go for a project. And so technically not a whip, but it's already ready. So we're counting this in my whip count as far as number of skeins. So there's quite a few in there. 85 sounds like a lot, a little embarrassing, but that's part of our goal this year, is to understand our yarn stash better and to then do something about it so we can make good use of the yarn that we have. And look, I have so much space in this little cubby. Amazing. I'll probably put some yarns that I had intended for making things for my son in there because the weather's getting warmer. I do not need to make sweaters right now for him. So maybe I'll throw some of that yarn in this area. Back to whips. Let's categorize these and then we'll be all done categorizing my yarn and we can find out my total number of full skeins of yarn in my stash. I have finished documenting all of my skeins of yarn and the number surprises me. We'll talk about that in the next clip where we'll see what everyone voted for over under in all the various categories and what my guess was, which was like the threshold for over under, and we'll see how everything actually shook out. So leave your final comments down below how many skeins of yarn you think I have. And this does not include partially used skeins that are in my scrap yarn area, any mini skeins, things like that. How many full or almost all the way full skeins of yarn do I have? It is time for the big reveal. How big is my yarn stash? So I have compiled on my laptop my original guess for how much yarn I had in each category, the actual number in each category, as well as over under what all of you voted on my Instagram. So then we can see if the majority of you voted correctly or incorrectly. I just think it's really fun, especially these games where we don't actually know until we keep track of it. And I now have a final number for my total yarn stash that I will reveal at the end. So leave your guesses down below and we'll see who is the closest. I'm gonna pop up over here my Instagram stories. I took some screenshots to show here what I asked over there. And if you like playing games like this over on my Instagram, then let me know down below because I had a lot of fun doing this and I would love to keep making content around kind of Instagram story questions and things like that. Let's start with our first category, which was single skeins of sock yarn, which I have a lot. Because if I'm not sure what to buy, but I want to buy yarn, I will buy a single skein of sock yarn because it is the most versatile for what I like to make. I guessed that there were 80 skeins in here. In reality, there were 70 skeins, so not too far off. Pretty decent way to start. And all of you guessed. 62% said over 80 and 38% said under. So the minority voted correctly. The unders won that one. And then let's look at sock sets that I have. So this was a full skein, or a 50-gram skein. I consider a full skein as well, which is accompanied by at least one mini skein. Some of them had 2 mini skeins. I even had 1 or 2 that had 3 mini skeins in this set. So for sock sets, I was even closer on this one. I guessed 70, and really I had 66 sock sets. So that was really close. And the votes were pretty split. 54% voted over and 46% voted under. So the unders won this one again, but again, it was pretty close. And then I was thinking about doing DK sock sets or DK sock skeins. I found out I only have 5. So I didn't even bother asking anyone how much they thought there would be. FYI, if you've been wondering, I only have 5 skeins of DK weight sock yarn. Accessories, I guessed that I had 70 of these. In reality, I had 80. So again, not too far off. Don't worry. We have some in the future that are very, very bad guesses on my part. All of you, again, it's pretty close. 56% thought I had more than 70 and 44% thought I had under 70. And so the overs won that one. I have this extra category of Christmas related yarns. So all these yarns were featured in other categories, but I thought it would be fun to see how much of my yarn is Christmas or holiday themed. I guessed 18. I actually had 23 skeins that fit this description. And now there's lots of like winter inspired skeins, or they are related to the holidays tangentially, like they came out around winter holidays, but I really included the ones that were like explicitly like holiday or Christmas collections or holiday or Christmas named yarns. My guess 18, reality 23. Actually, 77% of you guessed I had over 18. So you were right. Only 23% said I had less than 18. For my self-striping yarn, I guessed 20 skeins, and I think this might be my closest category. I have 18 skeins of self-striping yarn, so that is pretty on the nose. 63% of you said over and 37% said under, so the unders take it. Okay, this next one is a little embarrassing. These are my garment skeins. I guess 90. I actually have 120 skeins of garment yarn, and I think I just packed it in this box really well when I was unloading things. I wasn't like tossing them in willy-nilly, so I think that's why I underestimated so poorly. But 73% of you voted over, so those are the winners. 27% said under. For my blanket yarns, I thought I had 75. In reality, I had 60 skeins of yarn allocated to blankets. 19% voted over, but 81% voted under, so you were really good at guessing this one. The miscellaneous skeins, so all the leftovers that I found around my office space. I guess I had 60 of these miscellaneous skeins. I had 64 actually, so pretty close. 27% of people voted over and 73% voted under. So the overs, even though they are a strong minority, were strong and won that one. And then my works in progress. This was also a bit embarrassing to think how much yarn I have tied up in whips or that I've already set aside in project bags, wound up. It's like ready to go, pending a project kind of thing. I guessed 85 skeins. I actually have 104 skeins in this category. That is a lot of yarn. And not all of these are projects I've currently casted on. Quite a few of these are projects I've wound up and are in a project bag, have a project in mind that I've been meaning to cast on and I haven't. So I think I just have a problem with casting on and finishing projects because I have so many ideas and time is limited, right? So those are probably some of the projects I'll get to sooner than later, but I have a couple things like a blanket whip. I have a cowl whip that is taking a lot of 50-gram skeins. I have a pillow work in progress that I've been meaning to start. All of those, they probably combined take like 25 skeins of yarn. Between those 3 projects I can think of, a lot of them are high quantity works in progress. I'm not trying to justify how many skeins of yarn I have allocated to works in progress in my stash, but I'm hoping to rectify that soon. I have a plan. 42% of you voted that I had over 85 skeins and 58 said under. So the overs won that one. And then I just threw out a number, 500 skeins of yarn in my stash. In reality, I had 714. And now this also includes the couple tote bins that I took care of in my first video in this Attack My Stash series. All my older skeins, my acrylic yarns, things like that. So if I take those out, I had 587 skeins featured in this video. Still over because I only have 127 skeins over in the like older stash tote bins that are going to be stored elsewhere, not in my craft room. And 92% of you voted yes, you do have more than 500, and you were right. Only 8% of people thought I had fewer than 500 skeins. I also had a question box. People could guess how many skeins they thought I had. The closest guess was 690. And there was also a guess in like the mid 700s too, but a little bit farther away from 714. And then bonus question at the end for all my followers, I asked how many of you had a stash over 500 skeins versus under 500 skeins versus you didn't want to know, you didn't want to count, you did not want to acknowledge how much yarn you had. So this was kind of a fun split. 41% of you said you had over 500 skeins, 48% of you said you had under 500 skeins, and 11% of you said you didn't want to know how many skeins you had in your stash. So my guess is you probably have over 500, or at least nearing 500. I feel like there's some shame involved with yarn stash. And really, I just want to iterate that whatever size your stash is, if it's working for you, is a good size yarn stash. There's so many different reasons someone has a stash of yarn. And for me, I'm really grateful that I've had a job where I could afford to spend money on a hobby that I love and that brings me joy, that I could support so many small businesses. And I am also grateful that right now I'm not working as much. I can be home with my family more, and I'm hoping to use some of this yarn that I have kind of stockpiled a little bit when I had more of a budget for it, because right now I don't have as much of a budget for nice yarns. And I have a lot of projects in mind that I want to work on, so I don't really need that much new yarn. But whatever number you have in your stash, I hope that it is bringing you joy, that it's bringing you peace, and that if it's not, that hopefully you get some inspiration from these Attack My Stash videos to help curate your stash and use up your stash so that you are left with a stash that really brings you joy and inspires you in your crafting. So let me know down below how close were your guesses for how much yarn I had in my stash. Let me know how much yarn you have in your stash. I always love to hear about other people's stash and acquisitions. This is the product of like 5+ years of shopping mostly hand-dyed yarns. And so not everyone's stash is gonna look like this, but I'm really grateful for the stash I have. And I'm also looking forward to decreasing my yarn stash throughout this year and probably into the near future as well. So if you want to be along for this journey, make sure to check out my channel and subscribe and hit the bell notification down below to be notified every time I post a new video. I'm trying to come out with these Attack My Stash related vlogs about every month or so. I invite you to see some of my other videos if you haven't had a chance yet. I've got some work in progress vlogs. I've also got my intro to Attack My Stash where I first started categorizing my yarn. And you'll definitely see more content from me in this stashing down type of genre, if you will. Thank you again for being here, and I hope to see you again soon for another video. And until next time, happy making. Bye!